Oh, there you are. Welcome back. Hey, come here. I want to show you something really cool. You're gonna like this. Check this out. This is HomePage, an easy and simple to install bookmark managing tool with integrations across over 100 services and applications. The most awesome thing about HomePage is that it runs on a Docker container, so you can set it up on your local machine, a VM, or the way how we are doing it right here, which is going to be on a Raspberry Pi. First, I am going to show you how you can very easily get started on the Pi 5 and set it up. And it's, yeah, easy as pie. I mean, sorry, it sounds really cheesy. We're also installing Docker and Portainer to help us manage more easily our Docker containers. Of course, this section you can completely skip if you already have a Pi set up or a Docker container running. But after this initial setup, we're going to configure HomePage step by step. And I'm going to show you all the things that you can do with it. It uses a YAML style of configuration, but don't worry because it's really simple and intuitive. And I'm going to show you a setup that will help you maintain really easily this type of configuration, not just for HomePage, but for, well, anything alike. As usual, all timestamps and chapters are in the description, so feel free to jump to the section that interests you. And as always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, if you dig this kind of stuff, of course. You ready? Let's rock and roll. First, hook an SD card into your card reader. And by the way, if you use Raspberry Pi, I really recommend one of these cards. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever, but I just think they're really good cards. They work really well. I'll make sure I'll leave a link in the description with a direct link to Amazon. Like I said, no affiliation. Next, download the Raspberry Pi imager from the official Pi website. Once the installation is complete, launch the program and choose the device. And in our case, it's going to be Raspberry 5. Scroll down to Raspberry Pi OS and choose the Raspberry Pi OS Lite 64 bits. We don't need a graphical interface, so let's go with the Lite installation so we can save some space and some memory. Choose the storage and click Next. Under General, you can simply copy my screen right here. That means entering a host name, setting a user, and a password, and then just select a locale. In my case, it's the UK. Then click on Services and enable SSH with password authentication. This is so that we can immediately SSH onto the Pi without the need of connecting it to a monitor. It's also known as a headless installation, I suppose. Now, hit Save, apply the settings, and let it rip. Once you're finished, remove the SD card and put it in the Pi 5 or, well, whatever Pi model you're using. Hook the Ethernet cable and the power supply. And that's it! Your Pi is configured and ready to go. Now find out your Pi IP address, and you can use a tool like IP Scanner or Nmap, or simply just by looking at your DHCP leases. Then open up a shell prompt and SSH into that IP. In our case, we type SSH digital mirror at 192.168.10.32 because that's my IP, and yes to accept the fingerprint, and then the password. Next, we're installing Docker, and the easiest way to install it is to go to their website and copy their convenience script, which pretty much does all the work for you, and it works like a charm. I'll make sure that I copy it and I'll put it on the description, okay? Promise, guaranteed, unless I forget, but you guys will remind me. Then, let's add our user to the Docker group so that we can execute Docker commands. Okay, we're nearly there. Now, all we need to do is install Portainer so that we can, efficiently manage Docker containers more efficiently. Now, you can skip this, you don't have to install Portainer, but then you're on your own, man. You're gonna have to be running Docker run and Docker stop on your own, which is easy, but just boring. And in order to install Portainer, all you gotta do is two things. First, you create a volume with the following command, and then you need to execute the Docker run command with the parameters specified on their website. Again, I will put all these commands, in this case these two commands, in the description. Now open a browser and we're ready to start using Docker with a nice Portainer UI managing our containers. Just enter username and password and off we go. Now that we have all the prerequisites that we need installed, let's check out this HomePage application. Okay, so to install HomePage, let's first navigate to the HomePage website. So let's click where it says Docker, and now we have two examples here of Docker. Let's pick up this one, which is running as non-root, which is this version right here. Okay, so this is a Docker Compose file or Docker Compose set of YAML instructions. So what we want to do, and this is why we installed Portainer, let's click on environments local, and then let's click where it says stacks. And in here, we want to add a stack. And let's give it a name, so we call it HomePage. And let's just copy here the Docker Compose file that we just took from the instructions here. Now, this is a very straightforward Docker Compose file. You got the version, you have the service, and then the service definition, which has image, the container name, all this very standard Docker Compose. The interesting part is where we get to ports, and on ports we have 3000, 3000. Now, this bit right here is the container, this one right here is the host. And since I have some things running on port 3000, usually AdGuard and things like that, let's just put this 27. And the same thing, something very similar happens here when we get to volumes. So first of all, I'm going to remove this here because I don't need it, and it's optional as well. The other bit is this binding the config that is inside the container, and we want to bind it to a location in our host machine. Now for this, we're going to have to create this path in our host. Let's just SSH into my host, put our super complex password. I want to create, let's create this folder right here. Awesome. Okay, so we got this path, Docker, HomePage, config. Sweet. You can just copy this over from here, and let's go into Portainer and let's replace it right there. Cool. So next we have the environment variables, and this is for user group, user ID and group ID. You can basically put these properties here into an environment file, but I don't really need it because this is all going to run in my own home network. And so I'm just going to put here 1000 for the user ID and 1 for the port. But if you actually wanted to use an environments file, you could, and you could either append them here where it says add an environment variable, or you could just load it from an env file like it says in here. All right, let's just deploy our stack. And that was very, very quick. If we click on containers, we can see that this is now starting. So we can actually hit this logs to see if there's any logs, but it seems that this doesn't really output any logs. Oh, it says it's listening now on port 3000. There you go. So maybe it's already healthy, and it is. Cool. So now what we want to do is we just want to click on this published ports right here. And instead of 000, we just replace this with our IP, which is 192.168.10.32. Yes. It is .32, and look at this. That's HomePage in all its glory. If you want to find out your IP address and you don't know how, you can just go back and just type IP address, and this should list it somewhere in this mess right here. Oh, there it is. It's right here at the top. It's your IP address. Okay, now that we have the page, even though it looks pretty, we want to configure this to our liking, so that we can configure our bookmarks and our services and all of that. And in HomePage, all the configuration is done using YAML files or YAML configuration. And that's the reason why we actually mapped the Docker path or the Docker folder, the Docker config folder, into our host environment so that we can access them. Now, these files can be accessed from just navigating here into config. And as you can see, they're all listed in there. Now, in order for you to edit these properties, we could very simply just do, Nano or VI or whatever services, for example. And we can just come here, and with Nano, we could just edit them and tweak them to our liking. But this would be a big pain in the butt when you're jumping from one file to the other and you want to see which service you call what. And you'll see in a minute, this is not really that fun, at least to me. I like things simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to treat this like a development environment, okay? So let's just exit this. And what I like to do when I have things like that is essentially just fire up my VSCode instance. The first thing you want to do is you want to check that you have the remote extensions installed. That's this remote development and this remote SSH, especially this remote SSH. So you just need to click on it and click install. I already have it installed. It's a very simple process. After you guys do that, you want to, let's get out of here. You want to hit Control-Shift-P and type remote SSH in there. And you want to connect to host. So we just put it here, and now it tells me to enter a configuration or an IP. So we're going to add a new SSH host, and we're going to put digital mirror at 192.168.10.32. And this will open an SSH session into this machine. Let's save the configuration here. And as you can see, we're going to put connect. And it opens a brand new VS Code instance. It asks you for the password. which is really complex. And so what this does, as you can see here at the bottom, it says SSH connection. So we're essentially working on the Raspberry Pi now, not locally. So the next step, let's go here and open a folder, and let's go into our Docker HomePage config, and let's just do OK in here. Yeah, this is going to prompt you for the password. Just hit it again, and voila. Okay, we got all of our files, all of our YAML files here, and this is great because now we can start tweaking HomePage. Now let's head back into the HomePage website. They have a lot of tips and instructions here that you can use to get you started. So for that, let's just click where it says configuration. And now as you can see, we have settings, bookmarks, services, and these pretty much line up with what we already have here: bookmarks, services, settings, etc. Now let's navigate back to where we were, to our homepage. And even though this looks magnificent in all its glory, we can maybe tweak things to our liking a little bit. Let's go into the configuration page and let's start with the settings. Now, this gives you like some properties like adding title and things like that. Let's start by putting this one. Let's give a nice title to our page and let's go into settings because that's where we were. Now, it's got these providers here. I'm going to remove these providers because I don't really need these. But let's just add a title and we can call this our lovely channel, Digital Mirror. Cool. And just like that, as you can see here, the title has changed. Now, what other properties have we got here? Background. All right, cool. Now, this background right here uses an online image. So if we go back in here and we add this, this will change the background into this beautiful image that comes as default. But, you know, like I don't really find this very useful using online images because, you know, a lot of people like to use their own custom images, or they want to put their family, you know, as their background. I'm a romantic, so that's what I would do. So in order to do that, it tells us here that we can mount a volume. So I guess all the images would go inside this folder here, /app public images inside the container. And what we want to do is we want to extrapolate this and bind it into our host. So in order to do this, we're going to have to recreate the Docker container. But the good news is that we can do that very easily by using Portainer. That's why we installed it. So let's just go back into stacks and into homepage. And here we have all the containers that this stack basically is managing. We could have done from containers as well, but it's just to show you, you know, the whole workflow. So let's go into the homepage. And then let's click where it says duplicate and edit, and then we can scroll down, and where it says volumes, so we just add an additional volume. Oh, but before that, we should actually first create that folder, because otherwise this is probably going to crash. So let's go back in here. So we're in /config. Let's just do .. And let's just create a folder. Where are we? Okay, so inside homepage, and there's the config folder. Let's just create an images folder in here. Okay, now let's just copy that path. We copy this path right here, and so here in volumes, click on where it says bind, and the path on the host, let's put this, and the path on the container is going to be exactly what the guys are saying in here, which is this here. Okay, awesome. Now let's go back, put the images. Now, since we don't really have to do anything else, let's just actually restart policy. Let's put unless it's stopped, because if I stop, I don't want this kickstarting again. So volumes, okay, cool, it's still there. And now let's just deploy the container. Replace. All right, cool. It's starting. You can have a little peek into the logs right here. So we need to upload that image into this path right here. All right. So in order to do that, I'm going to use another tool. I'm going to leave this beautiful Windows prom here, and I'm going to open a program called MOBA Xterm, which is what I use to manage all of my sessions, really. So I'm going to create a new session, SSH, and let's just do like enter a host. The username is going to be Digital Mirror. And then on the bookmark settings, we can just call this here Pi, I guess, and just enter OK. Beautiful. All right. And why did I do this? Well, because now I can just navigate into Docker and images. Oops, what did I do there? Sorry, my typing. Now let's go here, Docker, homepage, images, and I can just drag into my images. Cool, it's there. However, let's rename this file to something a bit simpler. So let's just put So after you do this, as it says here in the documentation, you'll need to restart the container anytime you add new images. Let's do that. Again, super easy with Portainer. Just go here, select your service, and click where it says restart. Okay, now let's get rid of this image that we have right here. And following the documentation, we can add something like this, right? So let's just take this background from here and let's paste this here. So images, and we call ours image. Now this is starting to look really, really cool if you like looking at rain, which we have to here in the UK because it rains all the time. So another thing that I would like is just a header style. So instead of having this ruler here, we're just going to go here and we're going to add just this header style. Oh, be very careful with the indentation in YAML files. It's very important, otherwise it will throw an error. So look at this. This box looks a lot nicer and cleaner. And now the juicy stuff, which is why we actually install HomePage. This page is essentially split into 3 parts. This bit right here is the widgets. This bit right here is the bookmarks, and this bit right here are your services. And these here are defined in each individual YAML file. So you have one for widgets, one for services, and one for bookmarks. As we can see here, we have some information here about our Docker stats, I believe. And then we have a search, which I think goes to DuckDuckGo. So let's change that. If we are in widgets, let's just change this to Google or Bing. Now we got Google in there, so we can just put something like test, and it will open this. Don't write test in Portuguese, which is like this. It will open some unpleasant stuff. Don't try it. Now the next bit here, we need to define what we actually want for our bookmarks and what we actually want for our services. Now, if you already come from a previous system, you probably already have something in mind. But if you're not, if you're fresh to this stuff, you probably don't know where to start. You don't really know how you want to group your things or whatnot. I'll show you a way that can really help you get started if you don't really know where to start from. So you probably heard of this tool called Figma. And this is a super simple, really easy tool to use that helps UX designers do their work. And we're going to take advantage of this. So we already done a little bit of pre-work where I have work, networks, etc. And this is kind of how I would want my homepage to look like. So let's start with our bookmarks. We want to create a group of bookmarks, maybe not these that we have right here. So let's go here to VSCode and let's open bookmarks. I'm going to leave them here for now just so that we can have a reference. But let's, for example, copy this here, this one, put it here at the top. And let's call this one. So this one will be the group name of my bookmark. And let's call this one, just like I have here in Figma, I have work. Okay, so I want 4 columns. So let's add 4 things. So I got GitHub right here. Let's just save it. And now let's go back here. Okay, and I got work right here at the bottom. Oh, look how cool this is. Really sweet, right? But since we want this laid out in columns, we want 4 columns and not right there. Let's just come back here. If you come to the documentation, you will say that one thing you can have is this layout where this here is the group name and then the style that you want. So let's just copy this, or actually just press this button. Why not make our lives easier? Let's go to settings, and in here, and you see why I'm using VS Code, because we have to jump from one to the other. We don't need this widgets anymore. We have to jump from file to file. So I'm going to call this work, put it here and replace it with this. And now I want style row, and yes, I want 4 columns. So let's just save this. And if we open it and go here, there's my work right at the top, 4 columns, just like I have it here. And if you keep adding to it, these will continue to grow. So let's just add another 4. So let me just do this. It's easier. If we add more, there you go. So another thing that we have here is the networks. And the networks, we have set up this just to be just 1 column and nothing else. So let's just go here into VS Code and right under this, I guess at this point we can remove this stuff here. Let's create another one and let's copy this entire block here. And let's just go down there, and here we can just put networks, not nerdworks. So let's just save this, and there you go, networks. And it's all like 1 column. Let's just copy this bit here, style row, row, and 4. Now if we save, look at this, we got 4, but we want only 1 column, right? So let's just put 1 in here. All right, it's looking pretty awesome already. Okay, and now we get to the next part, which is the services. If you guys look here where it says my first group, my second group, my third group, etc. Now these are the services. So let's go back into VS Code and open the services YAML file. So first let's just copy this block right here and let's paste it in here. And instead of my first group, let's call what I had there, which is transcoding and AI. In here, this is the name of the group. And within this group, we have my first service. Now let's call this one here Jellyfin, shall we? And in order to know like what exactly to put in there, let's go into here, click on widgets, and now you have, these guys already support a vast variety of widgets. Let's just look for the Jellyfin one here, and look at that, we already have. So let's just copy this bit. Now let's navigate back. So let's just put it like that. Now we need to replace, there's a reference here, and then this is the URL where I guess this is going to be taking the information from. Okay, so I know that my Jellyfin server is running on this particular port right here, on this IP and this particular port. So let's replace it there, and let's replace it here as well. And now I need to generate an API key for this so that this can work. Okay, this is my own Jellyfin. So let's just click here, settings and dashboard, and you have something here called API keys. I'll revoke this one, but you can just create a new API key and you can type, I don't know, HomePage, for example, put it there, and then you can just copy this, and let's go back into our VSCode, and where it says API key, let's put it in there. Let's hit save, and oh, very important, do not leave these trailing things, because otherwise, look what happens. You get this error. So do not leave trailing slashes, and voila. There you go. So I got my very first, my first service. What a cheesy name. Let's call it something else. Let's call it Jellyfin. Why did I put my first service? It was probably already there, right? So Jellyfin. There you go. Jellyfin. Super cool. Look how nice that looks. Now this is supposed to have like a fav icon and things like that. So let's go back into the documentation right here. And I believe that we can have, so let's go back into configuration and services. Now, according to documentation as well, there's something called dashboard icons. So any icon that is listed in here, we can actually use it in in our configuration. So let's just go back. So it says here icon sonar. So let's just copy this icon. Let's just copy this entire thing. Let's go back here, Jellyfin icon, and this is probably called Jellyfin because why would they name it something else? And just like that. I mean, look how pretty this looks, right? Let's do another one. Let's do Edgard, for example. So let's go to services, scroll up, widgets, and let's look for Edgard Home. So we have, now we're not going to call this Jellyfin. We're going to call this Edgard Home. The icon, let's just, maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't, we'll see. Now I know that my Edgard runs on port, is it 20 or 21? 21, let's use the force and see what happens. Description, let's just put here Edgard Home. And for the widget bit, let's do our indentation correct. And let's use the same IP in here. And now I have here username and password, and these ones I'm going to have to blurry out. Let's save this. Let's go back into Digital Mirror and look at that. My favorite stuff. Great, but it looks really, really massive and there's no logo. Let's go back into the settings and in here, let's do my favorite stuff. And we want this to be style row, columns. Let's put 4 as well. Why not? Oops. I've done something wrong. What did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot to do this. There we go. Yeah, and now we're gonna have like 4 columns. Let me just investigate if there's actually an icon for Edgard, which I'm sure there is. Aha, yes. It was just called Edgard Home. So let's just copy this. So if you want to know how I got here, I just basically went to the documentation, clicked on services, went where it says icons, and then clicked on dashboard icons. And then I just go into PNG and it was right there. So I just need to copy this thing here, go back and go back into services. And here we can just put Edgard Home just like that. And it has to work. Ah, there you go. Look how pretty it is. Start having icons and stuff, and look at all this information, all the queries that I have, and the latency in milliseconds that I have. And all right, we could continue here for another half an hour, but I guess you get the picture. Every service will follow the same pattern of configuration. As you guys can see, I like my homepage sectioned per VM that I currently have running, but you can configure yours in any way you want. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, take care of yourselves, and I see you soon. Man, I sounded like Jerry Springer. Take care of yourselves and each other. Subscribe, don't forget. Take care.